Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Today we are going to talk about reading comprehension. Although the topic is very easy, there's a passage. There are 5 questions usually based on the passage. You have to read the passage and answer the questions. There are certain tricks that you can use while solving those questions so that we can solve them in less time. So we are going to discuss those tricks first, and then in the second half of the session, we will practice few reading comprehension passages which have been previously asked. Okay, so what we'll cover is strategies to crack RC, that's reading comprehension questions, skimming and scanning, how to think when you are solving questions like tone of the passage, core theme of the passage, or what could be the best title or summary of the passage, and then previous year questions. Okay, so usually what I have found so far is the passage ranges from 250 to 300 words. That's the size of the passage. It's usually in form of either one single long paragraph or 2 paragraphs, not more than that. That's the division. So it's either one continuous chunk of text of 250, 270, maximum 300 words, or it is divided into 2 paragraphs. The subjects are very varied. It could be economics, sociology, literature. These are different, very, very varied topics could be there. It is not essential to have basic knowledge of those topics, but understanding higher level of English is essential, especially if you want to understand what is the meaning of the words used in the passage. So if you are someone whose reading speed is slow in English, then you need to practice reading. As you are here for an English language course, I am assuming that the primary language you would be solving papers in is English. So if your speed of reading and understanding is lesser, the best way, or rather the only way which works, is to practice reading. Just like any other skill in the world, reading is also a skill that we are not born with. Literacy, letters is not something that nature has given to us right from our birth. We learn that once we are 2-3 years old, and we are taught letters, we are taught words, and that is when we also learn how to read and write. So it is a skill which can be developed with practice, and the more you practice reading, the faster your reading speed and comprehension speed. Initially, you will probably need to read while speaking. So like if I'm reading this, I would say strategies to crack RC questions. That's the initial speed. Once you are good at reading, you will be able to read that in your mind. You won't need to speak aloud. So you have some time, like 15-20 days. If you feel that your English understanding is good, but it's the reading speed which is creating a problem, then you can probably set aside 30 minutes every day for reading any kind of good English article, which could be in your field, which could be in any other field. Choose articles which are at the level of the Hindu or the Indian Express. Okay, not something which is very low level. I'm not asking you also to read novels or storybooks, because if you are planning for 15-20 days, you rather expose yourself to non-fiction content. which is at a higher level of English. So that's the first issue, like how to improve reading. Next, now we know reading, we understand. You also probably have time to solve the questions, but then how to solve them faster? So first tip is to use elimination method. Narrow down your multiple choice options quickly, just like I talk about in communication or in teaching aptitude. Similarly, here also, the first thing that you ought to do is look at the options and see which ones are not applicable. Unless you are very sure about the answer and you know which one is applicable, even then, just cross-check once. Rule out extreme, irrelevant, or factually incorrect options. There has to be one or two options which are exact opposite of what is said in the passage. Compare the remaining two closely. Check which one aligns best with the passage, tone, and theme. The options are not directly given in the passage. Probably you will need two to three different sentences. You need to understand them, comprehend them, and based on that, you need to solve the questions. The answers are mostly not directly given in the passage. Very rarely, one or two questions are such where you can directly answer that this is the name of the person. Otherwise, in most cases, you need to think, analyze, probably summarize whatever has been said, and then choose the correct option. If two options seem right, choose the more neutral and comprehensive one. Whichever one is very radical and inflaming, or something that could make some other person, it's a very radical, aggressive opinion. Instead of that, choose the more neutral one. This is a trick only when you are confused and you are not sure what to choose. That is when you can use this strategy. If you are sure of the option, you don't need to use this. Okay. Another way to approach this is keyword mapping. So when you have factual or detail-based questions, like 4 names are given and the question says which one of this has to be the answer. So pick keywords from the question like names, dates, phrases, scan the passage for exact matches, and then you read the sentence before and after that, after all those 4 names. So you will be able to find your answer. Reading only the lines around to the keyword. This is called scanning with a purpose. Okay, these are things that we usually do, but not consciously when we solve reading comprehension passage. You probably find those names in the passage and read things around it. This is what we do subconsciously. If you are not aware of this consciously, then doing it consciously would probably save your time once you have practiced doing it 3-4 times. Paraphrasing practice. Now, what is paraphrase? In communication also we discuss paraphrase. Paraphrase is when the same thing is repeated or summarized, but in different words or in your own words. So when you read something and you summarize it in your own words, you get a clarity or a better understanding of what is stated in the passage. It helps with inference, theme, and summary kind of questions like what's the inference, or what is the theme, what's the tone of the author, what does the author want to say in this. So mentally reword complex sentences into your own words. That would help you understand what the author is trying to say. Focus on what is the author trying to say rather than just the words. Paraphrasing improves both speed and understanding in reading comprehension passages. And one more trick is to practice. Now see, if we go by the fact that there are 50 questions and 60 minutes, 5 questions for each passage. Then 5 questions for each passage. Then you have kind of 6 to 8 minutes per RC set in which you need to read the passage and you need to understand what is being said. Then you need to go to the questions and solve those questions one by one. Taking more than 8 minutes is not feasible unless you have solved other questions very fast and there are no questions where you need to give time, because your calculation questions for mathematical reasoning is going to take time. If there is a logical reasoning question also, where where suppose there is a question, which of these two statements are equal or have the same meaning, then you would probably need to compare all the 4 statements. That's going to take time, such questions. So when such questions take time, you cannot say that I'll give 15 minutes to reading comprehension. So when you aim to improve your reading to answering time ratio, you need to set a timer of 8 minutes and see if you can solve the passage or not. So there are a lot of practice reading comprehension passages available online. Just try solving those, timing yourself with 8 minutes and see how many questions you are able to solve. Whether you are able to read the passage and solve the questions, and what's your accuracies. Speed and accuracy, both of them is important. So these are the common ways in which we can practice reading comprehension questions. Eliminate the options which you think are wrong. Map the keywords for factual questions and read only the lines around those keywords. Paraphrase the meaning of the statement and practice with timed reading comprehension passages. Now, very specific techniques for specific kind of questions. Skimming and scanning is overall a method to read passages. Okay, when you do skimming, see, because there's something called bird's eye view. You scan the entire thing at a you skim through the entire thing at a glance. If there are 250 words, your eyes just go from here, and within 30 seconds, you get an idea of what the topic is about, whether it is a sociology, whether it is economics, whether it is literature, whether it is politics. What's the topic? What's the content? You get the main idea of the passage. This could be used to identify the core theme, tone, or summary. Before you read the questions, you should give 30 seconds, max 1 minute, not more than that, for skimming, for reading the entire passage at a glance, going through it to understand what the topic is about. This is called skimming. Okay, the bird's eye view, what we call in Hindi as vihang avlokan. Vihang is a bird. So just like a bird looks from a height and it takes a bird's eye view of everything that's down, similarly you take a bird's eye view of the entire passage. That's step 1. Then step 2, you go and read questions. Okay, so how do you do skimming? Read the first and last paragraphs carefully. Now usually in exams like IELTS or specific English exams, TOEFL, FELPIP, there's one for Australia as well, for which PT, you have bigger paragraphs. Here, you don't have big paragraph, you only have 250 to 300 words. So reading the first 4 lines and reading the last 4 lines could do. Everything else in between, you could just skim through the keywords. Read the first sentence of each paragraph. It cannot be applied here, but this is a technique which you can use for reading any article also. if there's a research article that you need to go through fast, if there's a news article that you need to read fast. Skimming is a technique which can give you the main gist, the gist or the main idea of a passage. So read the first and the last paragraphs. In our case, read the first 4 lines and the last 4 lines. Glide over the rest. Focus on headings, keywords, and transitions like however, therefore, in contrast. You will be able to see these words because they will probably have commas or full stops close to them. Also, the words which are in capitals, that also you will be able to see easily. Like the keywords could be on the other hand, in contrast, thus, therefore. Mostly you have commas after these words. Also, when you skim through the passage, keep an eye on the words which are repeated, terms which are repeated. They probably signify the theme of the passage, like what's the core idea of the passage. The next technique is scanning, where you are hunting for specific information, finding the exact answers or data quickly without reading the whole passage. What we called keyword mapping. To find names, dates, numbers, definitions, or facts. But here we are not just talking about keywords, we are also talking about definitions, facts, and any kind of direct question that is asked where you don't need to paraphrase or summarize. Straight away, if you read the passage, you will be able to answer the question as it is and choose the correct option. Like, look at the question first. What year did whatever dash event was happen? So use your eyes to search vertically and horizontally throughout the passage. Don't read every word. Focus on capital letters, numbers, and unique words from the question. So like whatever words comprise of X or all the numbers that could talk about the years, or even if the numbers are written in words like FORTY, 42, that way. So keep an eye for that in the entire passage, scan that way, and you can find an answer to this question. With whom did that person go? So now with whom has to be the name of a person. So now search vertically and horizontally throughout the passage for the names which are given in the options. That is called scanning. Names, numbers, italics, and quotation marks. Okay. So how do you approach the reading comprehension passage? You skim through it before you dive. Then you read the questions. First, you skim through the entire passage in first 30 seconds or 1 minute. Then you read the questions. And then you scan whenever you need a specific answer to the question. This is how your overall approach to the reading comprehension has to be. First, skim through the entire thing, then read the questions, and then scan for each and every answer. Clear so far? Is there anything anyone wants me to repeat? This is what we usually do, but unconsciously, what I am doing is just bringing it to your notice. Okay. So if someone has a habit of reading the entire passage very nicely and understanding it and then solving question, that's also wrong, because we have a time-based test here. If there was no time limit, then that was not a problem. Also, reading all the question first and then going to passage will also take up a lot of time. So it is better to just skim through it first, then read the questions and solve them. Okay. So next, for the question, what is the tone of the passage? How do you solve the question which says, what is the tone of the passage? So what is the tone of the passage? The tone of the passage means what is the author's attitude or emotional stance towards the subject of the passage. Like, what does the author feel when they are writing this passage? What may be the possible feelings of the author or the viewpoint of the author, or their attitude towards perspective when they are writing this passage. That is called the tone of the author. So how do you do it? Stepwise. First, focus on emotionally charged words. Unfortunately, remarkable, nonsense, irresponsible, admirable, whichever words show emotions, that is what can probably signify how the author feels, whether it is positive, whether it is negative, or whether it is neutral, whether the author is just trying to give information or whether the author has some sort of opinion towards it. Second, look for contrasting words. However, but, although, yet, nonetheless, all this show shift in tone. The tone often changes or becomes more clear after the use of contrast words. That this was the situation. However, what happened was not a great thing. Now, this signifies what happened was not a great thing, signifies the opinion of the author. Next, you can note the sentence structure. Short, sharp sentences indicate urgency, anger, or assertiveness, whereas long descriptive sentences suggest a reflective or analytical tone. Now, what we are talking about is language. There's no rule so far, at least in English language, that has not been broken, or there are no exceptions. Every rule, even grammar rules, has got an exception. Subject verb agreement, there is an exception. Collective nouns, there is an exception. There is always an exception. So what we are talking about is a general way or a mindset of how to approach this question. Okay, so it may be that the short, sharp sentences, although they are used in the passage, it is still analytical. But mostly, in most of the cases, that is a human tendency. When you are angry or when you are in a hurry to do something, you don't go into a long story. You just say that, we'll talk about it later, just take the car and let's go first. Or the train will leave. We will not be able to reach on time. You won't even say this much. You'll just say, "Arey, hurry up. We'll talk about everything later. Chalo, fatafat niklo." That's it. That is a shorter sentence. When you are sitting leisurely and thinking and analyzing things, you have long statements, then you give proofs, then you reflect on what happened. Based on this principle, this point has been made. Step 4, ask. Is the author supporting or criticizing something? Is he supporting something? Is he or she supporting something? Or are they criticizing something? So when there is, when they are supportive or there is positive tone, it would look like they are appreciating or admiring something, or they are optimistic about the outcome, that something good will happen. There is a possibility of something good happening, or whatever was done was good, or whatever happened was a great thing. If they are criticizing or if there is a negative tone, they'll be critical. This should not have happened. This should not have been done. This person did not take the right decision. Something of that sort. They could be sarcastic or cynical. Cynical is complaining, doubtful about things. That is called cynical. When you are doubtful that whether the world can even survive beyond 2012, that's called being cynical. Balanced, a neutral tone. It is analytical, objective, or descriptive. Okay. So repeating again, focus on the emotionally charged words. Look for contrast words, and usually the tone becomes more clearer after the contrast words. Note the sentence structure and whether the author is supporting, criticizing, or is balanced about the opinion. Now, what are the different kinds of tones that are usually used? Okay, we'll take them one by one. Think. There are quite a few. So, appreciative tone. Someone is praising something. The scientist's groundbreaking discovery has opened new doors in cancer treatment. Her dedication and brilliance are truly commendable. Another example is the poet captures the essence of love with such elegance and grace that the readers are left in awe of her craft. So this such kind of statements show appreciation, that the author is appreciating whatever is the content. Critical tone. The government's recent policy lacks clarity and fails to address the core issues affecting the common people. It appears more cosmetic than effective. Another example, while the author's intentions may be noble, the execution of the idea is riddled with inconsistencies and logical fallacies. Logical fallacies. Fallacies is what you call it. So here the author is criticizing what has happened. Sarcasm. When when the author is taunting something, okay? Oh, brilliant. But what he's going to say is not something that is brilliant. What he believes in is this is pathetic. But the word used here is, oh, brilliant. Another app that promises to change our lives by reminding us to breathe. Just what the world was waiting for. Clearly, the company's motto is customer last, given how quickly they ignore every complaint. So this is a sarcasm or taunt on the motto that is usually there, that customer first. So this is sarcastic tone. Next is optimistic. Optimism is when you think that there is a possibility of something good happening. Though the path to sustainability is long, every small step brings us closer to a greener future. The change is slow but steady. So the author feels that although the change is slow, but it is steadily happening and there is a possibility that things might become greener in future. With innovative minds and collaborative effort, even the most complex global problems can be solved. So here again, the author is optimistic that the problem, although big, can be solved with collaborative effort. There's a possibility. So that is optimism. Now, opposite of optimism is pessimism. When you think, kuch nahi ho sakta, nothing can change. It's going to remain as it is. There's no possibility of things becoming better. Despite countless initiatives, poverty continues to tighten its grip on the rural population. See, it's starting by saying that despite countless initiatives, the poverty is still increasing. So if I have to paraphrase this sentence, I would say, although a lot of things are being done, poverty is still increasing. That's the paraphrase or the summary. Promises are made every election, but the ground reality remains unchanged, leaving little hope for any real progress. Another example, with the planet warming faster than expected, and global leaders unable to reach consensus, it seems unlikely that humanity will avert the worst effects of climate change. The future looks grim and decisive action appears more like a fantasy than a plan. So here the author has already said that the future looks grim and it seems unlikely that we can avoid climate change, the effects of climate change. So it is pessimistic. There's not much possibility. If you see the previous slide, it was saying that we can find solutions. Here it is saying most likely we will not be able to find solution. That's the optimistic and pessimistic tone. Now a neutral tone, which is not criticizing, not making any kind of sarcasm, not appreciating, not optimistic, not pessimistic, just stating the facts as they are. The study examined the behavior of 500 students across 5 cities and recorded their responses to online learning. The results were categorized based on demographic and regional data. There is no emotion involved here. It is neutral. It is just giving you information, a fact. The machine operates on solar energy and includes a built-in system for automatic shut-off after 60 minutes of use. Here, the tone is objective or neutral. But here, what we are seeing are examples of single sentences. Okay, when it comes in a passage, you have every sentence with a different sentiment, but then you need to see where the overall story is going. Especially in the usually in the last 4-5 lines, you realize what's the conclusion that the author is trying to give, unless it's an example. Otherwise, you will usually get an idea of where the author is trying to conclude, on which note. Persuasive tone. To persuade someone is to try to convince someone to do something that you want. That is called persuasion. We must act now to combat climate change. Waiting any longer will only make the damage irreversible. So the author is persuading people that now we should start acting. Online education should be integrated into traditional learning. It offers flexibility, accessibility, and global exposure. So again, persuasive, giving suggestions about what to do. And the last one is analytical. While the urban development boosts economic growth, it also displaces local communities. A balanced approach is essential to ensure equity. That although this is happening, the other side, there is a problem also that local communities are displaced. So what is needed is a balanced approach. Now, this is analysis of what is happening. He's not saying that we should do it. He is analyzing he or she is analyzing the pros and the cons and then giving analysis of what is happening. The author compares two educational systems, traditional and experiential, highlighting their respective impacts on student engagement. So now this looks like an analysis of probably a research paper that the author compares two educational systems, traditional and experiential. Someone who has read an article is now giving an analysis of it. So this is how the analytical tone reads. When you read it, this is how you feel. Okay, so a quick summary of all the tones. Please take a moment to read it. You can also take a screenshot. And these are the words usually which would signify the tones that we have discussed so far. I'll give you 2 minutes to read it. Clear? Anyone has any doubts? Anything that anyone wants to ask? If not, you can just please give me some kind of response. Yeah. The rest of you, at least you took a screenshot, right? So next, how to find the core theme of the passage. What are the steps to do that? So what's the core theme? The central message or idea. So how to find the central message or central idea or core theme is the same kind of question. The central idea or central message that the entire passage revolves around. So ask the question, what is the passage mainly about? And the answer that you get is your core theme. So how do you identify it? Read the first and the last paragraph carefully. So in our case, read the first 4 lines and the last 4 lines carefully. Okay. The introduction often sets the topic and context. In the first 2 sentences, usually, unless it's an author who is very great at words and going in a roundabout manner, usually in the first 2 sentences, you will be able to understand what the author wants to talk about. What's the topic? What's the context? The ending, the conclusion, usually reinforces or summarizes the main point. And these sections, the first 4 lines, the last 4 lines, often reveal the author's primary intention. I'm talking about first 4 lines and last 4 lines, not sentences, okay? First 4 lines, last 4 lines. They often reveal the author's primary intention. Look for repetition of key ideas, which are the phrases that keep on getting repeated. If education inequality, just an example, education inequality is mentioned in each paragraph, like after every 2-3 lines, you get to see the word education or something related to inequality, then probably that is the core theme of the passage. So what do you do is read the first 4 lines and the last 4 lines carefully. Look for a repetition of key ideas. Identify the author's purpose. Is the author trying to explain or argue or criticize or inform or persuade? What is the purpose of the author in writing this passage? This helps you get clarity on both the tone as well as the theme. See, in literature, you cannot separate things completely. We are trying to make these strategies so that we can solve the questions, but otherwise there's always an overlap. Okay, so when you understand the tone, it also helps you find out the theme. Summarize each paragraph in 1 line. So after every 5 lines, you can probably summarize what you have read. So if it's, let's say, 25 lines, not sentences. Sentences could go very long. If it's a passage of, let's say, 25 lines, after every 5 lines, if you can summarize what you have read in just a few words, then probably you will be able to understand at the end that where do all these summary point towards. All of these have to go in one single direction. What's the direction in which they are going? Eliminate distractions. Eliminate the minor details, which are interesting, but they are not the core theme. For example, a story about a village flood may have details about weather, infrastructure, and politics, but the theme may still be climate change policy failure. Okay? So you need to see what's repeating again and again. There could be one small interesting detail which you feel is amazing. This could be an interesting tidbit, but still it might not be the core theme of the passage. And usually what happens is we feel that this interesting story is the core theme. Those who are not well versed at solving RCs usually make this mistake. I have also made this mistake initially when I was learning how to solve reading comprehension passages for CAT entrance exam, MBA entrance exams. There the passages are longer, tougher, and more convoluted, and it really takes a lot not to get distracted there. Here also in UGC NET, ऐसा नहीं है. There are passages, there are interesting details, and you can get stuck on them thinking this is the core theme. There could be one very nice example, takes away all your attention. So what if you had to tell a friend in just 10 words what this passage is about? If you can give the answer to this, usually It is the core thing. Okay. So for example, the passage discusses the rise of online education platforms, their benefits, limitations, and future potential in the Indian education system. So what would be the core thing? The growing role and challenges of digital education in India. If it's something that's talking about urban migration, the author explores. Now, see, I cannot give you an entire passage. Like if you read the entire passage, it's going to take too long. So, just as an example, we'll anyway solve the passages, but just as an example here, if the author explores reasons behind, imagine that in the passage, first there are reasons behind rural to urban migration, then the impact on the cities are explored, and then at the last possible policy solutions are mentioned. Then what would be the core theme? Causes and consequences of rural to urban migration. Okay, so here please read this passage and let me know what is the core theme. So what's the answer? A, B, or C? Okay, so see here, first it talks about rise of digital banking. Then it says in rural area people rely on cash transactions. Sorry. So what does this reflects not just a lack of infrastructure but also a deep mistrust of digital systems. So your answer C is correct. Another question is, what is the tone of the passage? What is the tone of the passage? You have a screenshot with you where all the different tones are there. Which one of that can be applied here? Analytical, yes. Critical could be your second best option. If analytical is not in the given options, then critical. But the way it has been framed, it is more of an analytical tone. Okay. Next example. What's the core theme? Okay. So the answer is A. What is the tone? Just 3 people. They have a lot more people here in the class. What is the tone? Is it appreciative? Is it critical? Is it analytical? Is it persuasive? Is it optimistic, pessimistic, neutral? A wide variety of answers. Okay. So the tone is objective or neutral. Why? A fact is being stated that it is no longer a distant threat and it is already impacting millions across the globe. But there is no solution to this. If just one sentence would have been added, it could have become pessimistic. It is definitely not analytical. Sarcasm is when the real meaning is opposite of what is said. How do I give an example? Let's say your student has not done the homework. So when you ask, where's your homework? And they say, no, I have not done. So you say, wow, very good. Great job. That is sarcasm. You are saying very good and great job. What you mean is the exact opposite of it. That is when it becomes sarcastic. What were the other probable options? So pessimistic, not yet. Critical also. There's no criticism. It is just stating of a fact. You need more content to say that something is criticized, because here nothing has been criticized so far. In this statement, there is only objective, neutral fact being stated that it has already happened. Now, probably to 1 or 2 sentences before this or after this would change the tone. Okay. Next, another example. So, what's the core theme? Yes, the core theme is B. Now, let's talk about the tone. What is the tone of the passage? Reality is not a tone. Come on, think everyone. Have a lot more people in the classroom. Critical, pessimistic. Apart from that, analytical. Critical. Okay. See, at least try attempting so that you know whether you are thinking in the right direction or not. Okay. So the answer is critical. The first sentence would have made it analytical, but because an example is shared, it shows that um, a criticism is being made. Okay. Okay. So one more kind of question which is commonly asked is either what would be the best title from the given options, or what is the summary of the passage from the given options. How do you solve that kind of question? First, understand the core theme. The title or summary should reflect the main idea or the central message. So first, find the core theme using the methods we discussed earlier, like first 4 lines, last 4 lines, repeated ideas, and what is the purpose of the author. Next, look for a title that is broad but specific enough. It covers the whole passage, not just one part of it, without being too vague or too narrow. It should be neutral and unbiased. Usually, extreme or emotional words are not there in the title unless the passage tone demands it. Concise, it is short and clear in most of the cases. So mostly if you have to choose a title, the points that you will keep in mind is broad but specific enough. In comparison, in the options, neutral and unbiased, unless the tone of the passage is really very critical or really very inflammatory or aggressive, and not very, very long in size. But again, the word here that you need to pay attention to is usually. It is literature, so you need to find something that covers the entire passage. Okay, not just one portion of it. Eliminate the wrong choices first so that you have only 2 or 3 options to work with. Titles that focus on minor details or only one part of the passage are usually wrong. Okay, this is the same of the like the step 2, that these are the things that you should choose, and the opposite are the things that you eliminate. Avoid titles that are too general or unrelated to the passage content, and don't pick a title that is too long or complicated. Check for accuracy. If it's a summary question, that is this the correct summary of the passage, then you need to see that all the key points are included. Because it is a summary of the passage, then all the points from the starting to the ending, like I said, that after every 5 lines, just summarize that in your own words and you will be able to understand what is the summary of the entire passage. It does not add any new information which is not there in the passage. A summary will not include any information that is not given in the passage. And it should reflect the tone and purpose of the passage. If the passage is informative, it has to be informative. If the passage is critical, then the summary also has to be critical. Okay? And in your mind, paraphrase the passage's main idea. Like that question was given, what if you had to tell the summary of the passage to your friend in just 10 words? That would be the main idea of the passage. And that would be the closest one to the actual answer. So for this passage, choose the best title. Yes, so the answer is A. B talks about solutions which are not given, and then C is anyways not related because there's nothing called hospital management. Okay, I understood what happened. Let's solve this question. Okay, so usually because the passage is longer in size, it would not be so easy in the exam. But this is how you think when you have to solve a question like choose a title or summary. Next, choose the best summary. Yes, the answer is B because it balances the benefits and risks accurately. A is too negative and C is too narrow. Okay, so it says that it is harmful and should be avoided, but here it says that it should be, the user has to be cautious, not, it does not talk about avoiding. Okay, and C is talking just about privacy issues, but then there's another thing mentioned here called misinformation that is not included, and it says only problem, so that is again a problem. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, for solving previous year questions, first I'll show the passage, you read the passage, I'll give you 4 minutes to read the passage, and then I'll post the passage in the WhatsApp group. After that, on the screen, what you will be seeing is the questions, and you will have the passage in your phone so that you can refer to it. Okay. Okay. Clear? This is half of the passage. The first half. Please read it. This is the continuation of the passage. This is the further continuation. Okay, so this is the entire passage and I have shared it in your WhatsApp group. Okay. So let's start with the questions. Social security programs in India encounter the issue of direct implementation, indirect implementation, increased government intervention, and structural rearrangement. You will be able to find almost all these words in the passage. But what you need to know is that what is the issue related to social security program? You have the passage in your WhatsApp group for your reference. Let's focus on the questions. Just 5 answers. I want more answers. In exam, you will hardly have 1 or 2 minutes to solve the question. So the answer is B, structural rearrangement, because A and B are not directly mentioned. And C is mass of evaluative research that has historically been critical of state interventionism has further weakened. But here in this statement, there is no mention of increased government intervention. Okay, to see. Because the word increased is not mentioned, this option is not applicable. And the answer D can be found here, right in the first statement. Despite the fact that social security programs in India are not responses to structural adjustment, but have a long history of their own. Clear? For those who thought that probably C is the answer? Yep. Okay. Next. Question number 2. I'll give you 1 minute to read the question, options, and find the answer. Good. Keep the answers coming. The answer is C, although D is the not favorite. Okay. Why C? C. Here, A, that is high demand from prospective beneficiaries, is not mentioned in the passage. Okay. Social sector has many divisible allocations. And out of this divisible allocations, one division is poverty reduction. Poverty reduction does not have many divisible allocations. Social sector has many divisible allocations. So that is why B will not be the answer, because the option given here is for poverty reduction programs, too many divisible allocations are there. No. And even if we talk about social sector, that will not be the primary reason. For D, it is not mentioned that poverty reduction is affected, but the entire sector is actually affected. Okay. So what is the problem with poverty reduction? Downsized expenditure in real terms. That is directly mentioned here. That what's the actual problem? Incremental and piecemeal reductions in real expenditure. Sometimes the examples are so enticing that it creates a confusion. So as I said, the passage is not difficult to understand, but when it comes to solving questions, the options are very confusing, even if they are not tone kind of questions. Next, the expert evaluation reports are used to reform the social welfare sector, support the government spending on social sector, strengthen the political constituency of social security, and justify banishing the social security system. What's the answer? You have the passage as a reference. Please refer to it and take a minute to share the answer. This is a passage that has actually been asked in a UGC NET examination in, I think, last 2 years, I guess. So this is usually the level of passage and questions which is there, okay? The answer is D. Justify banishing the social security system. If you see here, such work has been put to uses other than those originally intended, not to reform the sector, but as a justification to abolish major components of it entirely. Okay. So what was it meant for? It was meant for a different intention, to reform the sector. But what was it actually used for? Justification to abolish the major components. Okay, so this was the intention, but what was the actual result? The actual result was D. Okay, A and B is opposite of what is stated, that support the government spending or reform the sector. And C, it has a weak political constituency dominated by technical expert persons. Okay, it is actually opposite. It says strengthen the political constituency, but if you see the passage says that it has weak political constituency. Okay. Just a moment. My laptop stuck. Okay. Clear with this answer? Acceptable? Okay. Next. The social sector in India is experiencing a vast amount of speculative literature, upward revision of budget allocations in a few specific areas, increased current debt account by certain states to protect their social security measures, change in composition and welfares of social change in composition and patterns of social welfare. This is important. Then you have to see which one is related to that. There could be 2 or 3 options which are given in the passage, but are they given in this context? That is also what you need to think of. The answer here is C, not D. Okay, there is confusion between C and D. Okay, so why the answer is C and not D? First of all, here lies the statement. Certain Indian states have increased their current debt in order to protect social expenditure. Okay, so D is not change, but conflicting time trends in expenditure levels and composition and patterns. Where was it? Here it was. That even though it is also flawed by spatial patchiness, conflicting time trends in expenditure levels and compositions. Okay. What does your option say? Change in composition and patterns. When it says conflicting time trends, it means it is increasing then decreasing, or it could also mean that some states are increasing it, some states are decreasing it. So there's a conflicting trend. It's not that it has changed, but rather there are conflicts in those patterns and compositions. Compared to that, C is an option which is more directly applicable rather than D. That is why here your best answer is C. Okay, if C was not an answer, then probably D could have gone. Okay. In A, vast is not mentioned, that a vast amount of speculative literature is not there. There is some literature. Again, for B, not upward revision, but conflicting time trends. Again, it's not that it's an increase or an upward revision, but rather conflictive time trends. Okay. So because of that word conflicting time trends, B and D are options which cannot be selected. Clear? Clear? If anyone has a doubt, please ask. Okay. Yeah. And the last question, the gist of the passage is that, which means the summary of the passage is that the social security system in India should be strengthened. The social welfare system must be abandoned. In actuality, diversification funds to areas other than social welfare are justifiable. There is no evidence as to utility of social welfare measures in India. What is the summary? Just a tip, remember the summary cannot be just one part of the passage. It has to be something that is overall. Think of what is exact opposite or what is not mentioned in the passage. You can eliminate those options. Then you will probably have only two options in which there would be confusion. And then you can think of which would go the best or which could be the summary of the entire passage. Okay, the answer is A. Okay. If you see the passage, B and C are exact opposite of what the author is trying to say. He's trying to say that the social welfare system, so much literature has been there, so many things need to be done. If you go to the passage here, see that it is a major spending. social expenditure is particularly vulnerable to budget cuts, then it has a weak political constituency, such work is put to other uses, something. But wherever he is trying, especially if you say it is an uncuttable portion, okay, with, you realize that the tone that he is trying to use is of supporting the social welfare. So that automatically rules out options B and C, because they are opposite of what the author is trying to say. A and D is where you can have confusion, and that is okay because both of them align with what the passage says. But D is just like this last line, likely outcomes of cuts in various types of, here. The evidence of actual impact is a long-term project of several decades. So there is no actual impact which is directly visible. But my point is that this is just one part. What about this part where it talks about how government has to be responsible for it, how politically or in terms of government policies, there are issues when it comes to this sector. It is a very small percentage compared to other countries. There have some governments, state governments have even taken debts, and some people have tried to abolish this entirely. What about all these points? They are not included here, right? When it comes to talking about evidence. So summary has to be the summary or gist of the entire passage. So that's why I said that first you think of what is the opposite. You will remove option B and C. Then you will be left with option A and D. And the only option that works, so D is something that is a part of the passage, not its entirety. So that's why I asked you, now think of what is only a small part of it and not the entire passage. So D is just a part of it, not the entire passage. That is why your answer is A, that the social security system in India should be strengthened. Clear? Clear for just one person, right? Okay, see, if you read all these portions which I have marked in bold, you will realize that the author is trying to tell us that we need to work on strengthening the. He's giving all arguments, he or she is giving all arguments, persuading that let's work to strengthen this. Okay. I'll give you a moment to let that sink, and then we will go for the second passage. Okay. So passage 2. I have also divided this passage in 3 slides. So this is the first slide. The next slide. This is the entire passage. I'm posting it in the WhatsApp group. First question. The basic principle of emotional labor management is be less hostile to other employees, entertain only limited interaction within organization, be polite to coworkers, do not show your frustrations. Think and then answer. So most favorite answer is C. Okay. Which is the answer? Why not D? While emotional labor does involve suppressing frustration, as discussed later in the passage, option D focuses more on a consequence or strategy rather than the basic principle. Okay, and that is why your answer is C. Do not show your frustrations is a strategy. The basic principle is being polite to coworkers. A is not less but not hostile. Okay, Be less hostile. Don't be hostile. B is again opposite of what has been said. So the answer is here in the second sentence. At the least, your managers expect you to be courteous, not hostile in your interactions with your coworkers. Courteous is synonym of polite. Clear? Okay. Question number 2. Within an organization, emotional dissonance affects cognitive consonance, effective job performance, solutions to labor issues, and constructive thinking. What's the answer? Think, cross-check with the passage, then answer. Others? At least try. Come on. Okay, so the answer is B, effective job performance. Why not A? It says that emotional dissonance is just like cognitive consonance, like it's an example just given for better understanding. It does not say that that affects your brain's thinking. C and D's are anyways not mentioned in the passage. Okay, so the confusion has to be between A and B. Then mark the answer. C. This is what I was talking about. Here it is said that it is an example, but your answer lies here. Okay. For all those who answered A, is this clear? Yep, I saw you, but the rest of them are not responding. Okay, next question. Question number 2. No, 3, sorry. In a workplace environment, labor managers should give preference to displayed emotions, felt emotions, negative emotions, or expressions of frustrations. What should be given importance? Others? Okay. So the answer is A, displayed emotions, because B, C, and D are opposite. Here is your answer. In contrast, displayed emotions are those that the organization requires workers to show and considers appropriate in a given job. Question number 4. Which of the following feelings should one feign at a workplace? Fear, excitement, contempt, happiness. You have to choose any two of this. Okay. Others? Okay. So the meaning of contempt, contempt, it is given CONTEMPT. Contempt is when you show someone that I do not respect you, or when you show someone that you are not worth respect. I'll not respect you. You are beneath me, or your talent is beneath me, or when you indirectly show someone that I am at a better level than you. When you think like that in your mind and the expression that comes out, that is called contempt. Okay. So the answer should be, of course, B and D, excitement and happiness, because fear and contempt cannot be shown. It is expected that we should typically express positive emotions like happiness and excitement and suppress, do not show, hide it, that is suppress, negative emotions like fear, anger, disgust, and contempt. Okay, therefore, C and D only, that is C cannot be your answer. Clear? Clear with the explanation? Okay. The last question. According to the passage, effective emotional labor management involves acceptance of emotional dissonance, free expression of feelings of frustration, display of friendly emotions, side tracking the learned emotions. So here I think there's not much of any doubt. The answer is C, because A is not mentioned and B and D are completely in contrast. And your answer can come from these three places: that your managers expect you to be courteous and not hostile. It can help you on the job, especially if you separate emotions into felt or displayed emotions. And last, that we should express positive emotions and suppress negative emotions. Now it's 7:55. So if I take a new passage, then it would probably take me 20 to 25 minutes more. So, and some of you must be having another class at 8:15. So I think let's do that passage as a homework. Okay. I'll show you the passage and then I can post the questions in the group and we can discuss the answers tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. So I'm showing you the passage. Read the passage right now. So at least you don't have to do that um, once the session ends. Okay. This is the first slide of the passage. And again, just to emphasize, this is actually a question that was asked. Because I'm a woman, I'm not taking feminism as a negative. This was an actual passage which has been asked as a question, okay? The next slide. There are only 2 slides in this passage. Question 1. The early feminist theory ignored among women the issue of enduring commonalities, significant differences, including factors, oppressive elements. I've shared the passage in the WhatsApp group. Here lies your answer. Okay, in the first sentence itself. What was neglected were the differences. Okay. Oppressive elements is not mentioned. It was just mentioned with regards to feminism somewhere in the middle of the passage, but that it does not talk about the early feminist theory. It did not consider the differences, like it was more for whites, but what about other nations, other races, other ages? Okay. Question 2. Initially, the feminist theory veered around the problems of A, B, C, D. Focus on the word initially. Okay, so see, initially means early. The early feminist theory focused on what? Did it focus on blacks and Latinos? No. It actually focused on North American middle class white women. It conflated the condition of white middle class women with condition of all women were highlighted in North America by Black and Latin feminists. So the Black and Latin feminists said that actually all the theories which are written, they talk about white middle class women, and it has been conflated. It has been considered that this is the thing which exists for the entire world. And in Britain, by Black and Asian feminists, they also said that this in America, white middle class women in North America, this feminist theory is not applicable to rest of them. So this was initially done, and then it was protested by Black and Latin feminists of when you say Latin, it refers to Europe, and in Britain by Black and Asian feminists. Okay, I hope that makes the answer clear. Okay. Okay. Next question. The analytical frameworks of Western feminists were critiqued by third world scholars as they had different societal agendas, radical and irrelevant. They had to be repositioned in different contexts. They had to fit in a discursive discourse. Please read the question. Just one answer. Okay, so see, A, having different agenda does not mean that it is a critique. Also, for B, the analysis of third world scholars was radical and of Western feminists was irrelevant to the rest of the world. These were two different ideas. Okay. Third world scholars are actually opposite of what they were talking about, the Western feminist with North American white woman, you know, and discursive discourse. This or this term actually means how language is used to frame issues, construct identities, and legitimize certain ways of thinking and acting. Okay, this does not really have a relation to the passage. Your answer lies here. This critiques heightened the irrelevance of Western feminism's analytical frameworks to the irrelevance of Western feminism's analytical frameworks to lives of most women around the world. So Western feminism's analytical frameworks were irrelevant. They were not relevant to the lives of most women around the world. And that's why what did they do? They attempted to reposition feminist debate within broader social, economic, and cultural context of the analysis. That is your option C. Okay. Question number 4. Post-colonial Western feminists were asked to free themselves from masculinist ideologies, disengage themselves from the idea of third world woman, challenge the third world patriarchy, or deconstruct their status as intellectuals. Others, please answer. I'm waiting for your answers. Okay. So see, the answer is here. Okay. Influential accounts of tendencies of masculinist imperialist ideological formation to construct this. So this does not say that they have to let go of it, but rather that this was what was going on. It challenged feminists to unlearn their privilege and to deconstruct their own authority as intellectuals. This is one long sentence, and it says that masculinist imperialistic ideologies, it constructed a monolithic. Monolithic is from a single point of view, a third world woman, which was said that this third world woman is a universally, she is a victim of third world patriarchy. And now it challenged the feminists to unlearn their privilege and deconstruct their own authority as intellectuals. Okay. So A and B are not mentioned. It's not said that they should remove themselves from the idea of third woman or masculinist ideologies, and they should free themselves from monolithic perception, a single perception story that all women are victims of third world patriarchy. But instead of that, what should they do? Deconstruct their status as intellectuals. Okay. And the last question. What does this passage speak of? You could call it the title, you could call it the core theme. That's the last question. Identity issues in feminist studies, authority of Western feminist scholars, experience of third world feminist, ideological constructs all over the world. Out of the given options, there is one option which has got absolutely nothing to do with the passage. You can remove that. Then you can think of something that is a very small portion of the passage. You can remove that. Then what remains are two options, out of which you need to think. One is an option in which it's again a part of the passage and not the full portion, not the full perspective. Okay, so D is too generalized. Here, there's a lot of talking about feminist studies, but it's not talking about ideological constructs of the word is a very big topic. Here, only feminist studies has been talked about. B and C are small parts of the passage. There's a part that talks about third world feminist studies. There's a part that talks about Western feminist. But overall, as a whole, the passage talks about identity issues in feminist studies. As you can see here, the collective view of feminism, related and more radical analysis came from feminist scholars in third world. The self-assumed authority of Western feminists to speak about. They were enduringly influential in highlighting the questions, identity and authority in feminist studies. Okay? So thank you. And let's have a great day. Tomorrow we'll start with logical reasoning. Do you have a question, sir? Just a second. Tomorrow we'll start with logical reasoning.